So we bring in an expert, the medical expert. Today's injury report, of course, brought to you by Cape Regional Health System. Each and every time we have a chance to talk to Dr. Kevin McHale, right here Thursdays, 5:30 on the Sports Bash. Dr. McHale with Penn Orthopedics and Cape Regional Health System. The best of both worlds for a healthier life. For an appointment, call 609-463-CAPE or visit us at caperegional.com/orthopedics. Dr. Kevin McHale, Eytan Shander in for Mike. Thank you, as always, for the time. Let's start with the back with Carson Wentz. I know we've been talking about the knee forever. What was your first reaction when you saw the news about the possible fractured vertebrae with Carson Wentz? I know we're still kind of waiting for information, verification maybe, but what was your reaction to how serious this can be?
Yeah, well, it's a really unfortunate event. This was the news that I was definitely not hoping to hear. We always hear of quarterbacks having some low back pain and low back strains, and it's incredibly common. Matthew Stafford just played through it last weekend, and it's not a real overall big concern. However, to hear he has a vertebral fracture, that's a lot more concerning. We talked earlier this season about J.J. with that transverse process fracture. Cam Newton, Tony Romo had them a few years ago. Typically those, you only miss about a game or so in your back. The vertebral fracture, what it seems is that that's not the case for Carson Wentz. So to understand the difference of the two, you kind of need a little anatomy lesson. The vertebral bodies are those building blocks of the spine that are in the front of the spine. And then you have these bony elements that go around the back to form a little canal for the spinal cord and the nerve roots to pass through. And that arch of bone has multiple bony prominences on it where muscles attached. So the transverse process are one of these bony prominences where muscles are attached, but they're not important for the protection of your nerve roots and your spinal cord. They just are there for muscular attachment. So when they fracture, it's not as big a deal. They have all these muscular attachments that are there. It keeps it there. It heals. It hurts a whole lot, but it's safe to play through. The fact that they mentioned he has a vertebral fracture that looks like he's going to be out for the rest of the season, we're a little bit more concerned that maybe they're talking about that vertebral body fracture. Now, obviously, more information will come out hopefully as they release it, but if that's the case, the fact that they said it should heal without surgery means it's likely a stable injury, meaning that it's not completely crushed, but it's a smaller break that didn't involve the ligaments to stabilize the spine, and it's not pushing on any of the nerve roots, so he has no neurologic problems like weakness or numbness or tingling. And it should heal fine. It shouldn't affect him in the long term, but it will definitely not allow him to get back to play this season for sure.
Heal fine. How much time until we're talking, injury versus he's healed fine?
So the difference between this vertebral body fracture is that risk of worsening injury. So like we talked about the transverse process fracture, kind of doesn't matter. It's not going to get much worse. You can go out there and play through it as it heals. This, if it is in fact a vertebral body fracture, the bone itself, that building block of your spine, is now weakened. And if he goes out there and plays too soon and takes a hit, that stable fracture can convert to an unstable fracture and have like a devastating result. So obviously that wouldn't be the case. For these types of fractures, depending on the severity, it can take a couple of months for them to completely heal. You may be looking at least 3 to 4 months before he's back to complete sport-specific activity and able to start performing contact drills and things like that. He should be healed completely by the start of next season. But I would not expect him, if that is the case, to be playing this season.
All right, now let's talk about the other case in which it's and pardon me because I have been missing this term the last hour and a half since it's been brought up. So, Josh, jump in. It's the transfer with the P on it, right? The smaller part of the back.
Transverse process.
Transverse process, correct. Now, if that's the case, we've seen players, including quarterbacks, take a week off and come back from it. Now, I know that there are football reasons, like where the team is and if there's worth it, but just looking at the injury itself, is there still no risk to re-injure that coming back that soon?
Well, a transverse process fracture, that's a little bit different. I think if that's the case for him, that would be the best news.
But you didn't bring that up.
But it would just take a little bit longer for it to heal.
Right.
But that's actually not the bigger reason why they may hold him out would be, as we know, unfortunately the Eagles' playoff chances are limited. If they do, he's probably going to have to miss a game anyway if that's just the transverse process fracture. The more real reason to hold him back after the last couple of games of the season would be, well, he's already got all this pain in his back. He's rehabbing his knee. Let's not put him at risk for getting some other injury because now he's favoring his back and his knee and maybe something else will get hurt. So if it is a transverse process fracture, the reason to hold him out wouldn't necessarily be that specific injury, just the fact that if his back's in pain and his knee's maybe not 100%, we don't want him to have some other devastating reason because he's favoring these two other issues.
Right. Doctor, he's not going to take a week off and come back like he's a 16-year-old kid that doesn't feel anything. I mean, he's still dealing with, even if the transverse process is healed enough to where, okay, you can get out there medically cleared, et cetera. So I think to the point you were making, he's still dealing with pain.
Oh, yeah. So I don't want to underestimate that at all. So when Jay Jolly got back out there and was playing with this injury, it hurts a whole lot. You broke your back. These are the transverse process fractures, although stable, are usually outside of the NFL, usually occur from car accidents. That's when we see them. Actually, that's how Cam Newton got his.
Yes.
So you're talking about a really serious injury, and it absolutely hurts a lot when they're out there playing. So by resting him, it's not to say, oh, he should be out there, he's fine. There's 100% a lot of reason why that extra week of rest would be warranted because it is very, very painful. Just that it's not dangerous for him to go out there and play because that specific part of the spine doesn't protect your spinal cord. And when we talk about other areas of the spine, it could be dangerous for them to be out there playing.
Dr. Kevin McHale joining us on the Sports Bash live at Chickies and Pete's, 97.3 ESPN. Eytan Shander in for Mike. The injury report, of course, brought to you by Cape Regional Health System. So I'm curious, with this moving forward, you're still dealing with the knee, and you mentioned the knee. And we clearly know that this did not happen last Sunday, that this is something that, according to all the people that are down there covering the team, even the team itself, it looks like, for all intents and purposes, Doctor, that this thing has been happening for the last couple of weeks and whatnot. And the body itself of Carson Wentz was already dealing with the knee. Did you see anything at all before this back injury came to light? Did you see, and I know it because I listen to you and I'm on with you now with Mike on a weekly basis, you know the game. We don't just bring you on here to talk about knees and backs. You know the game of football. Did you see anything from a medical-centric standpoint that Carson Wentz was getting better, not compensating enough on the other knee? You know what I mean? Like the little ramifications of that injury that you still deal with. Did you see any signs of him improving before this back thing came out?
Well, I think overall from the very beginning of the season, he might have shown some improvement for sure. But I think at the same time, there's no question that he was not the mobile quarterback that we're used to watching last year pre-injury. You're seeing him taking a lot more sacks. He's not scrambling at all. There's no real design plays where he's rolling out to the side of the pocket to make his throws. He's just not that kind of quarterback that we're used to watching last year. So while I'm sure we've been watching him get a little bit better from the very first week he was out there, I think that, unfortunately with the severity of his injury, we're kind of seeing the effects of this isn't just a straightforward ACL. It was an ACL with an LCO, and it's a longer rehab. And as a result, all these players spend that entire offseason training to get the peak performance or peak level of fitness before they start in the offseason. And for him, he was starting way behind the eight ball there. So I think he just wasn't able to get back up to his level of peak fitness and mobility, and we definitely were seeing that limitations in him playing this season. Hopefully next year when he gets back out there, that's not the case anymore, and we see that mobile quarterback that the Eagles drafted.
All right, I need to ask this because it's come up more so as rumor and kind of an outside report, but I'm asking you, in the medical community, if this could even – how often this happens, where you do a CT scan, a small stress fracture doesn't show up on an initial scan. Patient comes back to you and says, hey, doc, it didn't show up, but I still have the same thing. You scan again, and then it comes up.
So that is possible. Unfortunately, these studies aren't 100% sensitive to picking up injuries, and things can change in people's, their overall presentation. They can get hit again. Something that might have been a stress reaction where the bone was just kind of bruised and weakened could get converted to a true fracture if you got hit again. There are times when things will change from time to, from week to week based on, because he's going out there taking some tough hits week to week. So there's no question that things could change. I would highly doubt, I saw in the media some people saying that the Eagles hid it from him.
No, I didn't even want to go down that road. I was actually,
I know.
I was reading a tweet from let me read the tweet verbatim from Les Bowen.
Sure.
And the one word that got me that I wanted to clarify with you was often. So let me read this tweet, and that's what jumped out to me, because just having doctors in my family, this didn't seem like it happened often, but I defer to you because you've got the hard work and the degrees here. This is what Les tweeted. I've been critical of the Eagles medical staff, think there's some things that have happened this year that are odd. However, I am told that small or stress fractures often don't show up on initial scans. If the patient doesn't get better, you redo the scans. Eventually it's there. And I agree with what you said initially, which is, yes, it does happen, but often kind of threw me off, like this thing happens every week around professional sports.
So, no, I don't think it happens every week in professional sports, but with stress fractures, if that's specifically what we're talking about,
yep.
It is very often that there's a stress reaction that would only show up on an MRI. If you got an MRI, you would see this bone bruising in there that is the precursor to a stress fracture, and then eventually you will see findings on a CT or X-ray that is consistent with a true stress fracture. So we know that there are MRI findings that are true precursors to stress fractures that we can pick up earlier with an MRI. Now, if they got the MRI and it didn't show that, then it's a little atypical for it all of a sudden to be a new stress fracture that just occurred, unless he took a true hit that caused that new fracture. But it isn't. So when we talk about stress fractures, though, all the time, there is a process that's going on in the bone as it gets weakened from more and more repetitive loading, that all of a sudden you see it on X-ray and CT when it would have only shown up on an MRI at first.
This is such a valuable segment, and even more so today, because it's clearly the most dominating storyline. And I'm sure you cringe when you listen to sports talk radio and the average doctor who has never spent a second inside of a hospital says, well, it's only I suffered this when I was a guy. The guy who struggles to get out of bed is telling you how his stress fracture back when he was in college. And just to have this type of insight on such a specific injury that means so much to this fan base clearly is huge. So, Dr. Kevin McHale, we appreciate it as always. The injury report brought to you by Cape Regional Health System. Dr. Kevin McHale with Penn Orthopedics and Cape Regional Health System, the best of both worlds for a healthier life. For an appointment, call 609-463-CAPE or visit us at caperegional.com/orthopedics. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no problem. Hopefully we'll get a season where we're not talking about the franchise quarterback,
I'll take the backup. Yeah, give me the days in which we were talking about Mike Wallace. What happened, right?
Yeah, I'd rather talk about him for sure,
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
No problem. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Dr. Kevin McHale.